All right, what's up, everybody? We've got another episode of the Growth by Shawn podcast. I've got Chase Tolleson, however we want to say it. Sorry, butchering it already. But Chase, how you doing today?
Brother, I am doing great. I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
All right, sweet. So a little background about how Chase and I met. I would say that we're branching into the friends territory soon. I would say I see Chase more of as a mentor for me than anything as of this moment. But we met through Austin, who's been on the podcast. And now we're here just about to have this conversation. So um, I'd love to just hear just a little bit of like your background that we're just not going in like blindly. It could be just a
Mhm.
little bit about your past or what you do now or kind of wherever you want to lead us into.
Yeah, here's the cliff notes. My dad had a weight bench in his bedroom when I was 4 years old, so physical fitness was always a piece of life. I would ride my bike while he would go on jogs. I was in the weight room as soon as I was allowed at 12 years old in the gym in town. Uh, I was the skinny kid who had trouble adding weight, and I had an oversized head. I wore a size 8 hat in eighth grade. So like I got called a bobblehead. I got told I looked like a cancer patient when I buzzed my head. So like I wanted to add muscle. All that love for fitness carried over into a lack of direction after I got out of high school because 9/11 happened when I was in eighth grade. I was supposed to learn how to fly airplanes when I was 14, and my dad flew for United, so the cash wasn't there. Their contracts got changed, so that killed what I wanted to do as a kid. So all throughout high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I spent 4 years around town trying to figure it out. Ended up in the military. I wanted to go be a Navy SEAL. I sold my car to pay for LASIK surgery in 2009. Uh, got LASIK, got 20/10 vision. I had to wait a year until the Navy would let me go to make sure the surgery took. Well, in that year, something happened. I went to MEPS to process into the Navy on January 26, 2010, and they say, sorry, new instruction was sent out on January 21st. You're no longer waiverable or eligible for a SEAL contract. That arrest on your record, they changed the rules. We can't give you a SEAL contract now. Now, by this time, I talked with the Air Force, with the Army, and now with the Navy. I was like, you know what? I'm sick of this. There were a couple of weeks there where I gave my package to my second cousin, who was the senior civilian at the Department of Naval Defense or Department of Missile Defense. Now he's the senior civilian at the Department of Naval Intelligence. And he handed my package to an admiral, the deputy chief of personnel. And that admiral said, sorry, don't believe him, can't help him. It was the story the recruiters told me to write. So I got pinned on that one. I said, fuck it, get me out of town as fast as possible. And fast in 2010 was like 2 or 3 months. They got me out of town in 9 days. And I was working in engine rooms on a minesweeper. And they're like, oh, don't worry. Once you get in, you can, go past your physical for the SEAL PST, prove that you're a good sailor, and then go to buds. Thing about that is I was on a ship that only had 80 guys, and I'm damn good with a wrench in my hand. So they saw how good I was, and there's like, no, we're not letting you go to buds. Even if you get approved and they say you can go, we're not going to let you go. So then I had a chip on my shoulder. Did my job, did it well for 4 years, got out and opened a gym. Started that gym as a CrossFit gym, switched to a personalized strength and conditioning gym. We can go down a rabbit hole on the pros and many cons of CrossFit, uh, and how there was no litmus test for our grandparents and for general population. It was started on pro athletes. Uh, Opened that gym. I ran it for 8 years. I shut it down at the end of last year after my brother died, and I realized that I was working for grocery money, 70 hours a week, and missing out on family events. In that time that I ran the gym, I went from thinking that it was go hard or go home, no pain, no gain, doing workouts that I was yawning in the middle of because I would have been better suited taking a nap than working out, um, and switched to a more balanced approach. And then in switching that balanced approach, I realized that the true keys to unlocking fitness potential don't lie in the habits, in the gym, in the nutrition. It lies in our head, in our heart, and getting those stories straight. And that brings us up to current day. It's what I do now. It's what the Primal Man Pathway is my brand, and that's what I do online. So I help men literally around the world, Hong Kong, Australia, the UK, and all over the US, uh, take control of their fitness by first dispelling the victim mentality. So that's the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of stuff that I didn't know about you. I've been listening to the Primal podcast that you run these past like couple days.
Awesome.
And there's like some really cool stuff in there. Um, what I think would be like most beneficial to get things started is where you are now with helping others. Like it's not just when I like listen to you, it's not just about like the fitness portion. It's about like helping people find like their purpose, right?
Mm.
And one of the things that I want to start with is why is it so difficult for us to actually find that?
Because your subconscious is running the show. There was a, if anybody's interested in what I say in the next minute or so, the book The Web of Meaning is a phenomenal read. It's my top 3 books, and I've read a lot. That being said, there was a study done in the 80s, and they use EEGs, and this is talking about physical motion. They say, hey, let us know when you're going to move a finger, and let us know which finger. And they would see that before that person thought they made the decision, their brain had made the decision for them a second plus prior. Now, in more recent years, there's a group in Berlin, I believe it was, definitely in Germany, using functional MRIs to do the same work. And they're seeing that delay that our subconscious is making decisions for us up to 7 seconds prior. So we take that and we go through well-intentioned parents, hopefully well-intentioned educators, watching the news, watching movies, listening to music. Yeah, the parents were right. Marilyn Manson wasn't good for the kids. I listened to it too. Guess what? I was an angry little shithead. Um, so our subconscious is running the show, and people try to make these changes. Like, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym 5 days a week, or I'm gonna stop drinking, or I'm gonna eat cleaner, or I'm gonna drink more water. And what they don't realize is our subconscious has this almost like an autoimmune response, like an autoimmune disease to change, right? It says, oh, there's something different coming in. No, we don't like that. And that is the stories that run the show. A lot of people want to talk about mindset coaching. Well, you just need a better mindset to make it change. And mindset isn't just like, oh, well, I'm going to decide. Mindset is the story we tell ourselves about ourselves every single day. And if that story, one gentleman, when I had my gym, I use this example decently often. He was 280 pounds and he'd been working out for 11 years and he was still 280 pounds. He hadn't lost any weight because he had somebody inside of him that told him he was that 280-pound person, that he wasn't a 200-pound person. So his actions, his beliefs, his habits, they all aligned with a 280-pound person. And everybody wants to run fitness as a just eat less and move more, when really it starts with the story of who you are. And if well-intentioned coaches, myself included, have started fitness programs for individuals looking at the habits. And if you start with the habits only, you are building the ground floor of the house without first laying the foundation. The foundation is the story you tell yourself about who you are.
So the story that we tell ourselves, is this something that like, do you think we're born with it? Or I'm not sure if I should say, do we think, is there like research or science behind it, or just your personal belief? Is this something that we're born with and grow into, or is it just like a product of all of our environment and then we somehow start to just believe it?
The answer to that is yes. So there is generational trauma, generational stuff that is literally, we are seeing proof of it in epigenetics that generational trauma is passed down through the DNA. Okay. It's real. So there are generational things that can be carried through the DNA, passed to kids through birth. So yeah, if your parents went through hard stuff, if your grandparents went through hard stuff, if your great grandparents went through hard things, that's going to be passed to you, those stress markers, right? Now, we also know we can turn genes on or off. There's, on that note, there's mounting research that ADHD is actually sometimes attention deficit response, trauma response, from kids going through stuff. So when we look at it like that, it is also very much so nature. And that's the bulk of the work that I do, especially with my one-on-one clients, is looking at those stories. And one of my favorite, one of the first, so it sticks with me when it comes to fitness, was a girl at the gym that I owned. She's like, hey, I think I need a Chase psychology session. I'm like, well, I don't think we can call it that because I don't have a degree in psychology. And yeah, let's do it. Because people also say that 90 minutes with Chase is more effective than 20 years of therapy. And we sat down and she wanted to work on her nutrition. She's like, I eat at night. I eat chocolate at night. Cool. And what we did is we leaned into the feeling she gets that makes her want to snack. It's this anxious feeling, right? And we used a 4-step process that I use with my clients that I'm happy to share. People can use it on their own. I've had people use it on their own and then say, hey, I want to dig in. And then they end up coming on board. And we went to the past because the way this process works is we go, okay, when's the earliest time you can remember feeling that? And it was when she was 12 years old and her mom was pressuring her to have a certain body type to make the cheerleading squad. And we went back and we worked that story. And if I may, would you like the 4-step process?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So, we started with the snacking at night, right? And it led us back to this one in the past because the way the 4 steps work is write it down first, because so often people don't write things down. They think they're talking about it, right? They go through a hard thing and they're like, yeah, I used to be, I used to be homeless. I went through getting 3 divorces. I went through this. I went through that. And they're talking so fast. And where'd I lose you? Shawn.
Are you still here?
Yep.
All right.
Where did I lose you?
My
Because I saw you freeze.
Yeah, my computer just, I thought it shut down. It just like had the little circle and then all of a sudden it went black and then that was it. And then it
Weird.
just came back on.
Okay.
So we were just starting with the 4-step process.
Awesome. Cool. So the 4-step process. First, we write it down because so many people never write anything down and they think they're talking about stuff. And this is the downfall of talk therapy, right? Because we can talk about things and not actually feel them. And it's not the feeling that's the problem. It's not feeling it that's the problem. Joseph Campbell said it. Any feeling felt all the way through is bliss. And for anybody out there that's unfamiliar with Joseph Campbell, he pioneered the hero's journey. He recognized that it is a circular path that coincidentally was involved in just about all of old mythology. Uh, Anybody interested in digging into that, go find the movie Finding Joe for free on YouTube. That being said, the first step is to write it down. And you don't just write it down like we're diary, like, oh, I feel this, I feel that. Write down the specific event that's bothering you in detail, in conversational form, like you're explaining it to someone, like you're sharing the story. Okay. And then check in. What do you feel? Where do you feel it? And what does it remind you of? When's the earliest time you can remember feeling that? If there's any other stories that come up, title those, save them for later. Step 2, you read that story out loud conversationally, full pace, normal speed. And you check in again. What do you feel? Where do you feel it? And what does it remind you of? Cool. If there's any more titles, title them out because you can go through those 4 steps on those too. Step 3, you slow it down. You read it at 75 to 80% speed. And for a demo, if it feels like you're driving with your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, it's the right speed. Because so many people never slow it down. To my point about talk therapy, when we slow it down on that 3rd step, oftentimes it takes the story from right here in front of our face to out here, and we can start to see it. And it differs for everybody. Some people will start to see it and then finally feel it. Some people will start to see it and feel like they're getting some distance from it and feel a little more objective about it. Then step 4, You put a breathe mark. Take if you're writing in your notebook, put a little hash mark. If you're on a computer, write out breathe after every period, most of the commas, and some of the ands. So wherever it would be natural to take a breath. And at every breathe mark, you're going to take a giant belly inhale all the way down to your belt line. And then a long exhale. Two things happen here. One, that breath is a pattern interrupt. So it takes you out of the story because as opposed to flowing through it and getting stuck in the emotion, it interrupts this pattern that your mind has created and this narrative that your mind has created around the story. Two, it downregulates your nervous system. So if step 3 didn't take you out of fight, flight, or freeze, the sympathetic nervous system state, step 4 will. It'll take you in a parasympathetic, parachute, think slower, parasympathetic, rest and digest. So you get through step 4. And I give the 4 steps away for free all the time. And people that really want change go through them on their own. And then 90% of those people reach out in a DM and say, hey, what's the next step? I want to do something to move forward. Because I've been through some stuff. I lost my brother unexpectedly last year. And I had one of my buddies, one of the guys who, one of the only people that has more of these type of coaching sessions under his belt than I do, Dave Robinson, absolute gangster. And he ran me through a session. I think we actually did 2, because it is so valuable to have a coach lead you through this process. Because the next step there, when you have a coach on board, is to change the words. Because a lot of times we've created an idea of what this story means about us. And that idea of what it means about us is created with language. And our language aims our reticular activating system. You know what the reticular activating system is, Shawn?
You've mentioned it quite a few times,
Yeah.
but it's
So
something to do with like the front of your brain and like that I think it's that you're drawn to like um things that you see more often.
yeah, well said. It goes on a search and edit mission for your reality. So for anybody out there, the last car you bought, you likely started noticing more of those cars. That's the reticular activating system. And the language you use will create the story you tell yourself about yourself every single day. So if you're saying, oh, I don't ever succeed. I don't even know why I try. Things like that. Like it's just going to drop you right down the dumps. And the coolest thing ever, you can find Pinterest affirmations all over the place, right? You can find Instagram pages full of affirmations, and they're usually dog shit, pardon my French, because they don't actually apply to that person. You can grab random affirmations, and maybe you've done this, Shawn, and it's like, yeah, but it doesn't really resonate on a soul level. So where I come in is we go into the sentence that really strung someone up in that story. The one where when they were reading on step 3, they were going slow and then they went faster. And we go back and we read it again and again until they can read it even. This is often ownership is so important, to really drive this point home. When I got home from the hospital after my brother died last year, I stood at my island. I said, my brother died today. And I did not say it like that the first time. It was shaky. I cried, fucking holding on the island so I could stand up. I got to the point, though, I took a big breath. I got to the point where 3 hours after my brother officially passed, I could say, my brother died today. And that was powerful, gave me ownership. Because then when other things came up, I knew why they bothered me. When I saw my uncle give my dad a hug, and it fucking buckled my knees and sent me into my parents' garage for half an hour. It's like, oh, yeah, that happened because it was my dad getting a comforting hug from his brother that I won't get from my brother ever again on this plane. So you take a statement that really bothers you, and then you turn it around, and we flip one word, and we flip one word, and we flip one word. For example, one of my recent sessions, the client of mine, she owns a business, right? She owns an international business. She's successful. People see her. It's like, and at the same time, she on the inside is not motivated, doesn't know how to get it started. And we go back to an instance where she didn't feel like she mattered. And that was the statement that really got, I didn't feel like I mattered, or I didn't feel like it mattered. And we switched it to I, because make it specific. I didn't feel like I mattered. And the affirmation we came up with out of that was I matter to me. And the smile that that put on her face, because we took one sentence and flipped it all the way around to I matter to me. And that was, while that might feel good for some people to say, some people listening, the fact that it came out of a previous limiting belief was absolutely magical. And now, you want to know what? She's focusing on her sleep. She's putting work down more often. She's going for more walks. She's getting her water in. And she is there was one more piece that we were focusing on. Oh, and she's doing her cold showers to start the day. Because we cleared that limiting belief. So.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Oh yeah.
But first off, like, I've known that your brother had passed last year. I appreciate you sharing it again. And I mean, I'm sorry about it. I don't know what it's like to go through something like that. So what I want to touch on based on everything that you've said though, why is it important that I I know that you like explained this, but maybe I didn't fully understand. Why is it important that we don't suppress like all of our emotions and we feel each one all the way out, like you had said? Like,
Oh,
what happens when we start to suppress them instead of actually feeling them?
great question. So we'll have current day things that bother us. And when we ask, when's the first time you felt that? We go back to this memory and then back to that memory. And there's like 3 or 4 big events back in our past that we have yet to process, right? So The Body Keeps the Score is a great book. The Emotional Body is real. And these traumas get stored in our tissues, in our nervous system, in our limbic system. So when we go through these and we don't process them, they get stored. And then anytime we feel something that feels like those memories, they start trying to come back up. So you're filling your emotional tank, if you will, to the brim, and you're just leaving it sitting in there. And feeling it all the way through allows you to expel it and get that weight out of there. Oftentimes when I'm working with clients, like the first read, they'll feel a pit in their stomach, and then they'll feel it like heavy in their chest, and then it'll feel lighter because they moved it up and out and quite literally got something off their chest. So when we have those traumas stored in there, it's absolutely brutal to try and go through another big life event. And I fucking love my parents. They did a great job with the tools they had. They're good parents. And they both went through some shit in their lives. You know, they have stories. Our parents' generation did not have tools like this to process this stuff. You know, and it wasn't seen as socially acceptable. Like if you're going to therapy, something was wrong with you. So when my brother passed, you know, both my sister and I had done this work that I'm speaking of for at least a year and a half. So we had moved a lot of the stuff that would have came back up. We had felt everything. We knew how to control our breath, which we'll dive into breath in a little bit here. My parents, on the other hand, hadn't dealt with things. They just decided they were happy. And one, they lost a son. That sucks. And two, trying to process that was much more difficult than it could have been had they processed everything else. Because, okay, now they're feeling this huge amount of suck that they can't push down. Because sooner or later, something's going to come up that you can't avoid feeling. Well, guess what? Now the pressure valve is popped, and all the other stuff that you've buried, you're feeling that too. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. It's so when we actually like start to feel something through, we still like carry that like trauma or emotion. Is it just like it's easier to like get through it like on a day-to-day basis? Like it doesn't feel as hard?
Exactly. Like the
Okay.
grief is still there for my brother, for me.
Hmm.
I wrote him a 2 days before recording this was the year anniversary. I wrote him a letter. The pen is smeared on the sheet because I was crying on the notebook.
Hmm.
Um, it's still there. The thing is, I'm able to sit here and talk about it without shaking and wobbling and getting all down and sad and crying. One, because I know that wouldn't do any fucking good.
Hmm.
Two, because my brother knew we were only here for a finite time, so enjoy it. And three, because I've processed it. So I let myself feel it when it's appropriate, right? I will sit down and cry. The day my brother died, I was the rock. I would walk up to people who were starting to cry in the critical care unit while he was in there, um, alive only on machines, and I would they would be starting to cry, and I give them a hug. I started this even in the ER. Shit, I started when I got to my parents' house when the ambulance was there. So they'd be crying, I give them a hug, and I just start breathing. I wouldn't say anything. Start breathing low and slow through my nose, big belly breaths. You know what happened? They stop sobbing. They go down to a little cry. The next thing you know, in between their crying, it's this big breath, and then they're good. Show me somebody who says they have anxiety, and I'll show you somebody who doesn't have control of their breath.
So how did you start? You can go. You can go. Sorry, we are gonna try to talk there.
Oh, no, you're good, man. That was a
Uh,
good point.
Um, so where did you start to learn about breathing and how is it all tied into our nervous system and how it calms us down? I know that there's a lot to that. I've talked to a couple people about like breathing and things, but you're always talking about it. So,
Hmm. I first learned about breathing in mechanics and bracing of big lifts, right? Diaphragmatic
mhm.
breathing, breathing all the way down into your pelvic floor. And then as I did that, I got into more mobility and recovery practices and learned about the down regulatory effects of breathing. Okay. And then when I got into this work, because it's about the words, and really it's about the words and the breath. When I got into this work and really started focusing on the breath I'm taking every single day, uh, I realized its impact on our lives. You show me somebody that is argumentative, I'll show you somebody that's holding their breath. Show me somebody that has knee jerk defensive reactions, I'll show you somebody that's holding their breath. You show me somebody, like I said, that has anxiety, I'll show you somebody that's likely holding their breath. Breath is key. Your body needs oxygen. And if we go into like the more mystical side of it, some of the translations for the original text and scripture of what God's name was, Yahweh, breath. It translates to breath. So when we look at it like that, we need to breathe. And there's a lot of stuff when we're upregulated, we're not focused on this low and slow breathing, right? We got this fast breathing going on, or we're breathing our chest, or because fight or flight used to be saved for running away from something or hunting something or fighting. There's a great book by Mark Sapolsky called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And they don't get ulcers. Here's the whole book. They don't get ulcers because they save their fight or flight for when a lion is chasing them. And guess what? 2 seconds after that lion gets done chasing them, you'll see them shake because they have a way to release it from their limbic system. And then they start breathing again. They just go and they start eating. And as humans, we've fallen out of touch with ourselves, with the earth, and with natural medicine. and we drive down the street and we listen to angry music and we get angry when someone cuts us off. And then we go to work. And because we've been told that we should hate our boss, we hate our boss without understanding like that they have a story too, and they probably have somebody that's bothering them and the chain keeps going. And we keep holding our breath and we keep spinning up shit stories about life. And then we keep holding our breath more because we don't want to look at or feel those stories. And if everybody just slowed down, took 5 deep nasal breaths, and if you really want to down regulate yourself, go twice as long on the inhale as you do on the exhale. And bonus, next time you wake up in the middle of the night and you feel like you can't get back to sleep, lay there in bed, nasal breathing, 3-second inhale, 6-second exhale. Don't go grab your phone. Don't you dare grab your phone between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. You're just absolutely screwing up your body's dopamine production. And just lay there in bed, breathe. Promise you, within 15 breaths, you are likely back to sleep. Breath is paramount. And one last note on breath. If you truly want to listen to someone, breathe. The only difference between a conversation and an argument is not tone of voice, it's not anger, it's not mood. In my definition, it is when an individual who isn't speaking has already decided what they're going to say before the person who's talking is done talking. And if you can just take super long exhales while they're talking, you'll be present and hear them.
So as bad as I want to keep going on breath,
Yeah.
we can't, because you had brought up like how we're told to hate our boss and hate our job and all these things, all these different types of like media, okay, and all these different factors, and all these things that we can go and like listen to. That's where I kind of wanted to like go into next is how do we stop listening to all of this different media and get back into more of like our roots of you had mentioned nature as medicine and kind of just what was it? I don't know how you had worded it, but being more in tune like with yourself. What this is a big open question, I guess. What happened? Like, how did we get to this instead of like everyone being a little bit more in tune with themselves?
What we got to in this is called the victim mentality. And the victim mentality is an acquired personality trait where an individual tends to regard themselves as the victim of the negative actions of others, even in the absence of clear evidence. And it depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So I give that definition because how do we get to that? Well, we habitually thought about it and attributed to it over generations. And depending on how deep down the rabbit hole you want to dive, some people think it was intentional. Some people think that the programming out there is meant to keep us as little worker bees, meant to keep us doing other people's bidding. I'll leave that up for the listeners to decide, right? We got there by generations of an evolving victim mentality. And the English language, particularly, is designed in a very peculiar way that feeds the victim mentality. You've got a few language archetypes in there that aren't as present in other languages. Things like negations. You ever hear somebody who says, "Oh, I don't want to be late. I don't want to be late again. I don't want to be late again." What are they focusing on? They're focusing on being late. How about I enjoy being on time? Soft talk. Yeah, I might probably try to make it tonight. You're not going to see that person. And then projections. Oh, it's all their fault. Is it? Or did you have a hand in that? So how we got here is our language patterns over eons and accepting them as normal. And now it's scary to let go of the normal, to
Mhm.
stop watching your favorite TV show, to stop listening to the rap. Dude, I mean 2008 was the best year for hip hop albums. Don't at me. Um, and still I listen to some of those. I'm like, wow, this is really not helping anybody move forward. And once you realize how language programs your reticular activating system, why is this the stuff that record labels pick up? Because you can find it out there. You can find hip hop. You can find country music that doesn't just sing about my dog ran away and my girlfriend left me and my truck broke down. You
Mhm.
know, you can find rock music that isn't as angry and hate the world as Slipknot, which, by the way, I've used for multiple big, powerful lifts in the past. Like
Mhm.
I've done all this stuff. I want everybody listening to understand that. Like I've been there. I've Marilyn Manson had a lot of his albums back in the day. Marilyn Manson, Limp Bizkit, like and then 3 Days Grace and all that stuff, and then 2008 hip hop. Like I've been down that rabbit hole. And life's a lot better when you aim your reticular activating system up the good side. So to succinctly answer your question, how do we get here? It happened generations ago
Mhm.
when property lines started being drawn and religion got brought into government and they needed a way to divide people. And
Mhm.
in dividing people, they created structures for them to look to and people for them to hate. And how do we get back to it? Number one thing I can say is, and like the number one easiest thing, get barefoot in the earth and watch the sunrise. There is more and more science to the power of grounding for stress reduction and for health, and watching the sunrise as well. Like Dr. Andrew Huberman, one of the smartest people podcasting right now.
Mhm.
He's been on a tear lately about watching the sunrise. Um, so if you're not going to take it from me, take it from him
Mhm.
and keep doing it because it's a process. A lot of people will work one story. I've had clients like this. I love them. I love them. I love them. I hope they come back and finish the process. But they'll work one story. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Wow, that was a big breakthrough. And they still have 2 decades of stuff that they don't like, their subconscious doesn't want to look at. So they say, oh, I'm good. I'm good. And then they start falling back off track, falling back into drinking heavy, falling back into not moving their body. And that is why fitness and movement and nutrition and health will always be a staple of my practice. Because if all of this is energy, right? If it's language, and that's another hour-long conversation. And
Mhm.
quantum physics says that everything is vibration. And if we talk about, I'll lay down the law of entrainment real quick. The law of entrainment uh, is things communicating via vibration. And it was first noticed in the 1600s by a physicist who was trying to set his timepieces and noticed that two grandfather clocks, no matter how he set the pendulums, would always swing in sync. And he was laughed out of the like Parliament of Ministry or whatever in the UK. Well, in recent decades, he's been proven right. It turns out those grandfather clocks were communicating via tiny vibrations in their wooden housing. The same thing happens with dripping faucets. The same thing happens with women whose periods are in sync. The same thing happens with the moon and the tide. It's all vibration. Like our reality is vibration thing has been proven. It's not just some hippy dippy thing anymore. So if everything is vibration and sound is vibration, then it stands to reason that words, the inflection with which we use them, can largely control that vibration. And when we bring the breath into that, now we're cooking with gas. And the 3 degrees of influence, your habits, your personality, how you live your life, how you speak, how you think of yourself are contagious to your friends, friends, friends. So if we take the law of entrainment and the 3 degrees of influence, it becomes absolutely paramount if you understand the value of this stuff, and I'll even flip that, if you understand it, if you know it on a soul level to be the biggest grandfather clock in the room, so you can help to spread that. And so many people out there are trying to force people, trying to say, well, you need to eat better. Well, you just need to think healthier. And people don't believe that. People won't listen to them because one, they're trying to force it. Two, they are not yet the biggest grandfather clock in the room. They do not yet embody this stuff enough for people to follow them and to catch on. Make yourself the biggest grandfather clock in the room and watch your world change.
I think where I want to go with this after everything that you had said. So we had talked of that. This is where my mind had started to go. I was just talking with Austin because I want to stop smoking. Okay. And I had smoked cigars for like 6 years. I've been doing the stupid vape thing for the past 6 months. And he put me onto this book, and it talks about how we're basically like brainwashed into thinking that it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I've stopped for like 5 or 6 days now. And I feel great. And I'm like, how did I ever like do this? Like I feel like a completely different person.
Yep.
Um, and it's crazy. Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and like start to hit my vape. And I was like, what is going on? So something like that was this like habit that I had picked up. And we have all these like different vices, I'll say. Now, someone that like might go and see you, or someone that's trying to make their life better, they're a heavy drinker and then they have this breakthrough, but then they go back into heavy drinking. What draws us back into those things? Is it this um like this temporary satisfaction that we get from these small little vices, even though we know that they really don't make us feel that good? Or is it just because we're trying to like numb some type of like pain or mask something that we're trying to get through?
Your old self will go out kicking and screaming, kicking and screaming. I'll make that point very clear. So when we're making changes, whether it be quitting drinking, getting into fitness, if we've had decades or even years of a certain habit and we're trying to change it, it's going to take some time, even if we're rewired to fully rewire our subconscious. That being said, yeah, it is easy. It is really easy to go for the quick fix, to go pour a drink. I would invite anybody who like drinks or smokes. Like I smoke cannabis a couple times a month. You know, I microdose mushrooms regularly because if you want to talk about the safest substance, uh, there was a group in the UK that did a study on the dangers of substances on a personal and societal level. And when you combined personal and societal, alcohol was number one. You know, heroin was number one personal, but less societal danger. Alcohol was number one on damage, combined personal and societal danger. You know what was the last on the list, the least dangerous? It was psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms. So I'm a big advocate of psychedelics for mental health, as a side note. That being said, even though there's science out there that anxiety is real, you know, the more you drink, the more your baseline cortisol and stress actually goes up. And it's this self-perpetuating loop because then you wake up more stressed and you want to drink. And then you wake up even more stressed and then you want to drink. It's like it's counterintuitive, and yet people keep doing it because that's what we know. Again, coming back to the breath. I went live on Thanksgiving last year. So I've already heard it a couple of times today. People say, man, I need a drink because so-and-so is going to be there. Or I'm going to go smoke a joint because so-and-so is going to be there. And people crack their first drink. And oftentimes, I know this happened for me, where I would crack a drink and take a sip. And just that one sip, I'd be like, oh, I'm starting to relax already.
Mhm.
Do you think, Shawn, that the alcohol metabolized in half a second and I had the effects of it that quickly?
Well, no.
No. What did I do though before I said I felt good?
You had told
I
yourself, yeah. Okay.
I breathed. And yeah, I believe that that was the fix.
Yeah, I was gonna say you told yourself that that was okay.
Yeah. But I told myself I was. And so think about a drink. You crack it. And you take your first breath that you've likely taken all day.
Mhm.
Or roll yourself a little joint, pack a bowl, blow up a bag on the volcano. And take a breath. Breathe. There is a reason that before you make any big decision when you're angry, breathe. And if something's bothering you, you feel like you need a drink. If you're stressed out after the end of the day, you feel like you need a drink. Take 5 deep, slow breaths. Ask if you really need a drink, or if you just need to sit and breathe for maybe 5 or 10 minutes longer. I really honestly believe that besides fitness being a lifelong thing for me, I'm over 2 decades in the game now. Um, and I'm really in tune with my body. So I know how alcohol and how toxins feel. It's the breath and it's the fact that I have hundreds of hours of meditation under my belt. And when you can, meditation helps you to think about your thinking, to realize what thoughts are behind the thoughts. And it's really, really loopy when you get that going. It's like, man, I'm angry. Oh wow, I want this. And then you're like, oh wait, actually I'm thinking this because this. Or I'm about to say this because I just want this to happen. It's no longer just these surface level pieces. And when you can establish that level of mindfulness and realize why it is you want to drink, not just because your boss is a dick, because you had a long day at work, but because you haven't processed any of it, or because you haven't moved your body well enough, or because you're underhydrated, or because you just haven't gotten outside and got some fresh air, and the drink is the easy thing in the fridge, well, then it becomes abundantly clear what you must do, or what I would do in the situation. Take the drinks out of the fridge, because if it is in your house, you or someone you at least marginally care about will consume it. And the negative effects of alcohol start at as little as 1 drink per day on average. So that could be 7 on a Saturday.
Mhm. So, what was I gonna say here? It's like when we are growing up, right? What if we start to do like, is it more likely? I want to say that it is, but like this might sound like kind of a silly question. If we were to start meditating and be a little bit more in tune, like with ourselves at a younger age, and let's say between the ages of like 10 to 20, you would start meditating maybe a couple times a week. You never really got into alcohol or anything. It's going to be less likely that when you go and you're 21 and you take a first drink, that it doesn't become something that it's um like going to turn into some type of like bad behavior for you.
Totally. You might not even take a first drink at 21.
So what happens when between like that 10 to 20 and then someone goes off to college and then they're in tune with themselves, but they've been a little bit more like sheltered from a social life, I'll say. What happens in their brain when they go off to college and then all of a sudden they just go off the rails? Like, why might something like that start to happen?
Lack of education around how it feels and what's going on. I'd imagine somebody who was raised holistically and had good stories in their head will wake up after the first night of binge drinking or even take their first drink and go, wow, what the hell is this?
Mhm.
Uh, I know from the community I run in and for my own daughter, like uh, Rockefeller said it. He wants a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers, and that's what the compulsory education and public school system was created on. It's a whole
Mhm.
nother rabbit hole to get into, and
Mhm.
likely that if somebody is being raised meditating, in control of their words and their stories, and living with a good, healthy, holistic lifestyle, it probably either probably intentional, soft talk intentional, either going to head to college with a very, very firm hold on who they are and not feel the need to jump into this societal uh, rabbit hole,
Mhm.
or they're not going to be in college and be off building a business, learning
Mhm.
a valuable skill. Uh, a lot of it has to do with watching our parents too. Like if they didn't drink, but they watched their parents drink, or if they watch shows that glamorize drinking, it goes back to that programming thing.
Mhm.
And if the programming was limited or even nil that said, hey, drinking is good, drinking is fun, well, even like they're going to look at the people, even, there's less and less of a chance that they go and get drunk just for a social life, because they're going to be so empowered and in control of themselves.
Mhm.
That being said, it could happen, right?
Mhm.
You grow up sheltered. There's no alcohol. There's uh, no education around it, or lack of firm education, or just fluke curveball. It happens. Um, and yeah, the pressures of being a young kid at college and wanting to fit in socially would be brutal. And I'd imagine for someone like that, they would likely have a moment and they'd be much less likely to develop a bad habit like a alcoholism. Believe I've
Mhm.
seen the stat out there that like most alcoholics started drinking like in their teens,
Mhm.
or you're much more likely to develop alcoholism if you start drinking earlier in life.
Mhm.
So
Gotcha. Um, I think instead of going down any more rabbit holes that could take another hour or so, I feel like this is a pretty good place to wrap it up. Um, is there anything closing remarks wise, or let people know where we can find you and keep listening to you?
absolutely, thank you. I have a podcast, the Primal Man podcast. We have 62, 63 episodes out as of this airing. We got some even bigger guests coming soon. We have some phenomenal episodes on there. I have a album on Spotify. It's more philosophy, music philosophy, want mindful stuff to listen to. It's called Mystical Giants. Go check that out. And I have a program, the Primal Man Pathway. And the purpose there is to help men love the way they look, live their most powerful life, and become truly proud of the man in the mirror. That you can find that and resources for that on my Instagram at coach_Chase_Tolleson. We have access to our free ebook there that once you get that free ebook, you'll get a link to our free Facebook group. I do live master classes and trainings inside that Facebook group. Um, and if I'm going to leave them with anything, the basics work. In a world full of people trying to sell you advanced stuff, get your feet in the earth, get your eyes on the sun, eat real food, move your body, and drink your water.
And we'll leave it at that. Nope. I appreciate you coming on today, Chase. So I know that everyone that listened to this is going to learn something. I definitely did. And we'll wrap it up there. So thanks, Chase.
Thank you.